newsagents.
With respect and humility, I invite you all to join this government of service in the mission of national renewal. Our work is urgent, and we begin it today. Thank you very much.
That was the sound of Britain's new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. Get used to it. A different tone, slightly more cautious perhaps, and slightly less polished. But that is the man who we voted for overnight to take us in to change.
So has a new dawn broken, or has it not? Welcome to the newsagents. It's John.
It's Emily.
It's Lewis. And we are running on fumes.
But we're back in Newsagents HQ. We should just say that for anyone not watching.
Yeah, so we've been away for a very few hours,
Almost
and now we're
5.
back here.
And the first episode under a Labour government.
Yeah, our first episode now that Keir Starmer has been sworn in as Prime Minister. The black door has shut, and he is making it very clear that the work starts right now. And you can only imagine the dizzying array of briefings and documents and everything else that are being passed under his eyes right now.
Let's play you a little bit more of that speech. These moments are iconic. He's standing on the steps of Downing Street, having just visited our king. And this was the force of what he's trying to tell the country this morning.
Good afternoon. I have just returned from Buckingham Palace, where I accepted an invitation from His Majesty the King to form the next government of this great nation. I want to thank the outgoing Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. His achievement as the first British Asian Prime Minister of our country, the extra effort that will have required. You have given us a clear mandate, and we will use it to deliver change, to restore service and respect to politics, end the era of noisy performance, tread more lightly on your lives, and unite our country. 4 nations standing together again, facing down, as we have so often in our past, the challenges of an insecure world, committed to a calm and patient rebuilding.
We have had 58 Prime Ministers, and there have only been 6 until now that were Labour. So he is the 7th Labour Prime Minister.
58
It does.
since we've been going.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've
We
had most
started
of them
on
in here.
the Marquess of Rockingham, as I recall. He was very good. Yeah.
There was something in Keir Starmer's speech where he's clearly trying to find the right thing to say about Rishi Sunak, who probably, I'm guessing, he doesn't have huge amounts of respect for, but he wants to be gracious. And so he lands on this British Asian sort of phrase, which I'm sure is well meant, but I can't help thinking he's tried desperately hard to find the thing that he can be nice about. You know,
He
well
called him
done
hard
you.
working as well.
Hard, yeah. I mean, again, it's just it's ever so
tried
slightly
hard.
damning with faint praise. He did try hard, and he came up against lots of obstacles. The other funny thing I thought was when he said, "I'm going to work for all 4 countries again," and there was just that hint that Scotland was back in the fold, that they'd stuffed the SNP, that of all the things on his in his in tray, independence isn't going to be one that he's going to have to think about on day one.
Well, of course, the street, a la 97, was filled full of party workers, Labour party workers, and they all had Union Jack flags or Union flags, but a lot of them had Scotland flags as well, and Wales flags, which was very deliberate. And I have to say, I think, just
because
leaving aside...
we were pre-devolution then.
Well, yeah, that's true. And leaving aside the substance, which we can talk about, just as a piece of choreography, it was easily the best choreographed entrance into Downing Street of any Prime Minister for a long time. I mean, he was helped by the weather. Again, a little bit of pathetic fallacy. Sunak had to again leave in the rain, and the clouds parted for Sunak, for Starmer when he left Buckingham Palace. So that was a bit of luck. But also, there was, you could see it in his face. For a man who is not terribly emotive and doesn't often show much of himself, you could see he and his wife Victoria look genuinely joyous. The Labour Party very seldom looks happy about anything, but they looked happy today, and they should be, because for the first time in 19 years, a Labour leader has won a majority, and for the first time this century has done so from opposition.
And also, I've seen one or two Conservative commentators kind of welcoming aspects of the speech about the focus on service, the focus on country first, party second, the stability and moderation. And kind of thinking, oh, maybe this Keir Starmer bloke's not going to be too bad.
Do you know what? We've forgotten there are so many factions to the Conservative Party now that half of the people who...
Are there more factions than there are MPs, do you reckon?
Yeah, I sort of think there are, because, I mean, this is what I kept on thinking and seeing throughout the night, which was the faces of the Conservatives who have exited office. We're looking at the ones who just lost their jobs and thinking, yeah, deserved it. Yeah, fine, not a problem. And I guess Keir Starmer represents, for them, a breathing space where they don't have to think about themselves for 5 minutes. We don't have to hear the psychobabble. We don't have to be on the therapist's couch. We don't have to be talking about this collective mental breakdown of the Conservative Party.
But I think the danger is that the Conservative Party becomes more like the Labour Party of old. You lose an election, fantastic. That's the election out of the way. Now we can arrange our slate for the leadership contest and who's going to fill the shadow cabinet post.
They can't wait to knock the stuffing out of each other.
Exactly.
It's going to be a lovely bit of bloodletting to come in the Conservative Party. Time to settle some scores.
And it's going to be so weird. The first day.
They've never stopped doing that, to be fair. They didn't need a Labour government.
That is fair.
But even more so now, after they've taken this drubbing, about who is to blame, what is to blame for that drubbing. Is it because they were too woke and too liberal, or was it that they were cozying up to reform far too much? I mean, these
problem is the answer can be all of those things.
Yes,
it can actually be all of them in different places.
But these battles are so unresolved. The Tories are not at the stage where you've just lost the election, where you think, geez, how do we get back into power immediately? Labour went through years of soul searching.
But I thought, I mean, John, you picked up on that, the phrase used about politicians of stability and moderation, like I am. And I as well, I thought that was very telling and very interesting phrasing from him. He's used this theme before about having a sort of less noisy politics, a politics that intrudes less on your life, and he reanimated that theme again. And I think that there is a sense, I mean, obviously we talked in the first episodes today about how this victory from Labour is broad but shallow, in the sense that there are loads and loads of marginal seats and loads of seats that wouldn't necessarily come together normally, a bit like Boris Johnson's victory in 2019. I think one bit of thinking from Labour in terms of how to keep it cohering is that they're very obviously aware that in a world which is increasingly unstable, which is more populist, which has more radical right, Trump could be back in the White House soon, Marine Le Pen could be in France, our own politics, Conservative Party could dip into that direction as well. There is a world where Starmer can say to the British electorate, who we know are very weary of politics, I'm still the stability. I'm the guy who can deliver it. I'm the person who represents moderation. Of course, in order to deliver that, you have to actually deliver the stability, which is not going to be easy for loads of reasons that are not necessarily in his control. But you can see that could become a theme of his premiership.
We are about 3 results, I think, away from the full tally. Two results from the full tally. And maybe it's just worth, if you're just joining us, or for the second or the 19th time this week, just telling you where we are now on that tally, because I think you've got the list, haven't you?
Yeah, so it's 412 seats for Labour against an exit poll of 410, so tick there. Conservatives on 121, whereas the exit poll had them on 131. 121. Can you imagine?
Can't believe it.
It's unbelievable. The Liberal Democrats, astonishing results. 71 MPs now. The exit poll said they'd have 61. Reform, not doing as well as the exit poll. They have got 4 against an exit poll of 13.
But they think they're going to get a 5th.
Right. And the SNP on 9. Exit poll said they would be at 10. So Labour have scored an enormous victory. And just when you see, I tell you what, the visual representation of it will hit home when you see the Commons chamber. And of course, the Labour Party are going to be sitting on one side, and there is going to be a few benches, and that is going to be the Conservative Parliamentary Party.
And masses of Lib Dems. I mean, the Lib Dems are going to look, I think, like the SNP did when they first got that majority in 2015 in Scotland.
Well, we've not talked about it enough. I mean, they're going to be the third party again. It's a big thing.
But not just the third party, like a massively third party.
Biggest third party since the 20s.
Is huge. And to come from 11 seats to 70 shows that their vote distribution is just out of this world in terms of, I think they've got, what was it, 11% of the vote?
Well,
and it's landing them 70%.
Yeah. Well, for once, the Lib Dems aren't going on about PR because they're actually getting.
They know they ought
They're actually getting exactly more or less what they would
and the
get
reform vote,
in terms of the
by
proportion
contrast,
of the vote.
I think we worked out is that each reform MP will be worth 1 million votes.
Yeah.
I mean, an astonishing fact there. So they've got 4 million votes, which only lands them 4 seats in Parliament. Yeah.
I think one of the things we haven't spoken about enough is the non-aggression pact there was between Ed Davey and Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't that candidates were stood down to give the Liberal Democrats or the Labour Party a clear run where the main party was second. It is the fact that they obviously put zero resources in. There was clearly a nod and a wink. Don't worry, I know you're second in this. We're not going to put any effort into this constituency, but we know you're second in that other constituency, and we're going to put no effort in.
Just sort of a quiet gentleman's agreement.
Just a quiet gentleman's agreement, and it's been deadly effective.
And had it worked even a little bit better, there were about 40 seats, Conservative seats, where the Lib Dem and Labour total was greater than the Conservative majority. So had it worked even a little bit better, in those seats it probably wasn't just quite clear enough who the main competitor was in order to basically tactically vote.
There were some big own goals as well. I mean, one of the Leicestershire seats, was it Leicestershire South?
Leicester South, yeah.
Where, I mean, we've talked about that a little bit, but to have sort of competing factions of Labour MPs and former MPs and independents meant that somewhere that should never have gone Tory.
Well, I didn't have Leicester South on my Conservative gain bingo list, I have to say, at the start of the evening. But had that tactical agreement worked better, then the Lib Dems would have been the second party and the Conservatives would have come third place.
But
so
more
that's the thing, it could have been worse for the Tories.
But more importantly, if it had gone as you suggested, Lewis, I'd won the sweepstake.
That is what this is all about,
important.
essentially.
Yeah, that is very annoying of the Lib Dems, isn't it?
I mean, if they had got it right, I would have been bang on the money on that sweepstake.
Yeah, well,
lost it.
Woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Have we mentioned, since we last were together, the fall of the lettuce, La Lechuga?
No, we haven't.
Yeah, I think we should just cover that. And maybe we should...
Can we have mournful music? Bit of maybe Mozart's Requiem?
Well,
we can't play her
we
speech.
can't play her speech because she left.
She never met. I thought that was
Was it a mic drop? I mean...
I thought that was pathetic. I thought that
Let's explain the story, because essentially she's standing in southwest Norfolk.
We're talking about Liz Truss, in case you hadn't guessed.
She is in the safest part of Tory Blue Shires, Norfolk, that you can sort of possibly imagine. But in that seat of southwest Norfolk comes along an independent character called James Bragg, who's actually not how you think of an independent. He is about as true blue, kind of old-style Conservative as you can possibly be. He comes from what they originally used to call in that seat the turnip Taliban. He wants to return to Conservative values, which he doesn't feel.
About them enough.
We do not. I mean, they've sort of been and gone. But essentially, it was James Bragg leading this sort of independent voice that split the Conservative vote in southwest Norfolk and let Labour in. I mean, Norfolk is now a pretty patchwork place because you've got the Greens, the Green leader winning in Waverley Valley. I mean, the Greens had always been strong at a council level there, but you've got Labour in Liz Truss's old seat, and there was this awful moment at the
Therese
count.
Coffey's old seat.
And Therese Coffey's old seat is Labour as well. That's Suffolk, yeah.
Oh, Suffolk, Norfolk. East Anglia.
Coastal, yeah. Exactly. But there was this moment where everyone at the count was waiting for Liz Truss to appear. And they knew she was in the building, but they couldn't find her. And I was having flashbacks of that exit sign moment. Do you remember where she couldn't get out of the room, where she launched her leadership? Anyway, she's finally on stage. She has to go through this incredibly painful, personal, poignant moment of losing. And they offer her, as an ex-Prime Minister, I don't think we have seen a former Prime Minister decapitated in an election like that before. I'm pretty sure it has not happened.
It hasn't happened for 100 years.
And so they offer her the chance to make a leaving speech or concession speech, whatever, and she just leaves.
It was amazing. I thought it was pathetic. I thought it was absolutely pathetic. And the reason that she didn't do it is because she just didn't want the clip to be the Portillo moment, which it would have been. She didn't want to give her enemies a satisfaction, which I can sort of understand, but it's graceless, and it would have given her the opportunity just to address something that she's never done. And maybe if she had, because she only lost her seat narrowly, maybe if she had accepted some contrition for at least some of the mistakes she made as Prime Minister, okay, it wasn't entirely everything her fault, but clearly some of it was.
No.
She never accepted it, and she could have at least used that moment, departing from public life, to make some sort of recompense, and she chose not to do so.
But she hasn't got the emotional bandwidth to do that.
No.
She hasn't got the empathy to
She
realise.
hasn't got the emotional bandwidth to do local radio. I mean, let's just remind ourselves. So probably not.
Yeah, and she just, probably thinks she did nothing wrong and that nothing was her fault, and it was the conspiracy of the Treasury and the Bank of England to conspire against her.
She blamed the fact that we hadn't left the ECHR.
And, and all these things, that it just makes her seem an even more absurd and ludicrous figure. And the remarkable thing is not that she was Prime Minister for such a short time, it was that she was ever Prime Minister.
Do you want a little factoid before we go to the
Oh,
break?
go on, let's
little
go.
factoid to illustrate the scale.
The
of
fingers are up.
Conservative
Look at
destruction,
this.
right? So the Conservative Party had 5 Prime Ministers in the last Parliament, and 4 of their seats are now not held by the Conservatives. Whitney, Cameron's seat is Lib Dem. Maidenhead, May's seat is Lib Dem. Uxbridge, Johnson's seat is Labour. Truss's seat is now Labour as well in South West Norfolk. The only one.
And Henley,
is,
you've missed out.
well, that
because
was
Henley
Boris
was, of course,
Johnson's
Boris
previously.
Johnson as well.
Yeah, he gets double trouble. The only one that remains Conservative is Richmond and Northallerton. But I mean, we talked a lot in 2019, right, about Sedgefield going Conservative. You got 4 for the price of 1. That shows
think
the
even
scale
though-
of Conservative fracturing.
I think if you wanted a metaphor for what happened overnight, it wasn't that every single Tory was punished. We've seen 120, maybe more, get back in. It wasn't the direst of those poll predictions. But if the public were doing one thing last night, it was punishing the leadership. It was punishing every way that the Conservative Party had governed us. And I think that's why it went straight to the heart of these totemic seats. Whether it was Liz Truss, whether it was, Maidenhead, whether it was Henley, there was a sense of, who stood here. Even if they weren't standing this time round, the damage that has been inflicted on this country. And so it wasn't, I don't think they were fought necessarily at a personal level. I think they were bigger than that.
Well, we can say that we were talking in the first episode, right, about Labour vote share and it being a very low vote share, which is true. I think what we can conclude from these results is that the Labour Party might not have been loved, but the Conservative Party was despised.
Yeah.
And that's the result you get.
So the choreography of the morning was, obviously we've heard from Keir Starmer, but before that, Rishi Sunak had to come back to Downing Street, says goodbye to the staff, and then he makes his speech in Downing Street, his farewell speech. And actually, I thought he was pretty much pitch perfect. I was so struck by the difference in tone from him on the campaign trail and him this morning in Downing Street, accepting responsibility and apologising.
Good morning. I will shortly be seeing His Majesty the King to offer my resignation as Prime Minister. To the country, I would like to say first and foremost, I am sorry. I have given this job my all, but you have sent a clear signal that the government of the United Kingdom must change, and yours is the only judgment that matters. I have heard your anger, your disappointment, and I take responsibility for this loss.
And he was also very generous about Keir Starmer. I just thought, during the campaign, he sounded so kind of chippy and
He said Starmer was a security threat.
Yeah, and now he's saying that he's a distinguished public
Campaigns
servant.
turn
The
people
campaigns
into
are like that.
animals, don't they? I mean, it's horrible, really, what we do, because you can feel his team saying, go harder, go for the jugular.
Short and curlies.
Yeah, all that stuff. Trying to compare Starmer to Putin or whatever it is, trying to say he's a national security threat, trying to pretend that just because you've sort of slightly modified your pensions offering, that Labour is now the one trying to starve OAPs to death, right?
And also,
all that stuff.
I mean, like 2 weeks before the campaign, the Tories say we'll spend 2.5% on defence, and suddenly Labour are a security risk because they haven't immediately
they're basically in bed
matched.
with Putin.
Yeah, exactly. And I just wonder whether actually Rishi Sunak would have done rather better had he struck a more kind of inclusive
He couldn't have done much worse, could he?
Yeah, gracious tone that was so absent.
Which was how Jeremy Hunt won, I think. You know, Jeremy Hunt, who was expected to be, the Chancellor, was expected to be the scalp of the night. And actually, we all know, because we've sort of had conversations, Jeremy Hunt barely left his constituency for that whole campaign, barely went to any of the major sort of openings or events for the party, because he just trod his streets for 6 hours a day. He said he'd never worked harder in his life. And I think it was a personal vote that kept him that seat of, I mean, it was a new seat, Godalming and Ash in Surrey. And I think there is a sort of lesson in there that you can make politics a sort of a slightly less vicious, vitriolic place if you want to.
I don't know. I think we can be a bit pearl clutchy about this stuff. They were running a campaign. They didn't have many options. Like, what were they supposed to do? I mean, he couldn't just go around being really nice to Keir Starmer.
No,
but
he did. But the manner in which he kind of, the way he was so
his
chatty
strategy
about
was bad.
everything.
He should never have called it at this time. He should have made.
I don't think that would have made any difference whatsoever. We'll never know.
We'll never know. I mean,
but you know, I don't think we're suddenly going to.
I think if he'd called it for November, and we announce it in gets announced in October.
Well, he wouldn't have pissed off the D-Day veterans.
And
that would have been an
Farage is
improvement.
in America on his tour, stumping for Donald Trump all over, the key swing states. Would Farage have come back?
Anyway, we've got a chance to see the new Sunak because he's going to be leader of the opposition briefly. He said he's going to stay on until the Conservative Party can decide to put the mechanisms in place to appoint his successor. So we don't exactly know how long that will be and whether he means that he'll stay on till the end of the contest, but he will briefly be leader of the opposition.
Can they change the rules to carve out the membership?
They could do, but there's no way they're going to do that.
Should we talk about a few of the smaller parties before we just kind of skirt around that? Because Plaid Cymru has done incredibly well tonight. They've doubled their tally in Wales.
Last night, actually, Emily.
Whatever night. They did it. Partly, I think, because obviously Labour was the governing party in Wales, and if you were pissed off with what was going on your doorstep, but you also didn't like the Conservatives, you might have gone nationalist. So they have got a total of 4 there. The Greens, I mean, what is astonishing really is that Caroline Lucas came in here on her, last day, her farewell, and told us how lonely it was being the only Green in the village, in Parliament. And sure enough, we've had a decade with just her seat in Brighton Pavilion. And on the one election she goes, they've done phenomenally well, gaining 4 seats, geographically spread across. I don't know whether the Green vote is partly held up by disaffected Labour voters who would probably ideologically fall along the same Gaza space that the independent candidates are doing, and I don't know whether that's going to be a problem for the Greens going forward or whether they'll just embrace it, but they're very happy with that tally. And there's a couple of really weird Northern Ireland seats as well. The TUV winning in North Antrim. The TUV, Jim McAllister, will now be sitting in Parliament. He is the closest to reform that Northern Ireland have got. He is kind of the Ben Habib of reform in a way, but very, very hardcore unionist. Anti-Windsor Framework, anti-Good Friday.
Paisley.
He's out Paisley. He's literally lost Ian Paisley his seat. So if you want something properly hardline, that's going to be quite an interesting voice. And George Galloway's gone.
So Starmer, the Starmer speech, we've all seen lots of PM speeches. How do we rate it as an introduction to the nation as Prime Minister?
I think it was where he wanted to pitch it. I didn't think he wanted to do a Blair, it's a new dawn, is it not? And
it certainly wasn't that.
It certainly wasn't that. I think that it was serious, workmanlike, roll up our sleeves, we've got to get started now. This is, the country's fractured, I am going to try my best to bring it together. What I'm fascinated to see is whether there is, we always look for rabbits out of hats, which is what obviously the 97 Labour government did with giving the Bank of England operational independence.
Like the day after the election.
I'm waiting to see whether there is, if growth is the key for Labour to deliver on everything that it says it wants to, I'm wondering whether there is going to be some big symbol from Rachel Reeves when we get her confirmed as the Chancellor of the Exchequer, which will presumably happen in the next 24 hours or so.
Apparently he's going to confirm the whole cabinet today. He wants to get on with it and have a cabinet meeting tomorrow, which would be unusual on Saturday, because Starmer wants to have basically a policy blitz over the course of the next week before, of course, he goes to Washington, because he's got a ton of foreign trips to do, which is in his first
you'd
week or so.
expect that. Why wouldn't you? The only person that he can't put in the cabinet is Jonathan Ashworth, who lost his seat.
And
Tagham
Debonair.
Debonair.
And Thayam Debonair, who would be his culture secretary.
And
I have to admit, I had a slightly meta experience of Keir Starmer's speech, because I was watching it in the back of an Uber, and then I suddenly realised that we were being held up by whatever was happening ahead of us. And sure enough, the thing that was happening ahead of us was probably Keir Starmer on the way to make his speech. So when I was trying to sort of follow what was happening, I kept thinking...
I'm amazed they didn't let you go past.
Excuse me, Emily
It's
Maitlis.
Lady Emily Maitlis
I
here.
am.
Clear the roads, please.
Honestly.
Yeah, maybe he was behind me. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, he's got this really delicate balance, right, Starmer, in one sense, hasn't he? Because he's got... All along, he and his team have been absolutely clear, and you could see it in that speech as well. They've wanted to underpromise and overdeliver. They believe that one of the sort of currents of our politics has been a cynicism that has been fostered by boosterism and Boris Johnson promising everything and other Tory politicians doing the same, and then nothing ever coming of it. And yet he has run explicitly on the mantra of change. I actually thought in that speech he went a little bit further on occasion than I thought he had in the campaign, when he was starting to talk about how he basically saw it as his mission to improve the lot of working class families, that he said that he should be judged on whether or not he improves their lives. Again, he qualified it lots of times by saying it's not going to happen overnight, but he has run on change, and he has got a mandate, as he himself said repeatedly, that is bigger than any Labour leader, than any Prime Minister since Tony Blair. He's got a bigger majority than any of the governments we've had over the last 14 years have had. He can do what he wants, and the public will know that. So balancing that rhetoric, or what he's done, which is run on change, and the power he's had, with the difficulty of what he's got to do and the task in front of him, it is going to be difficult, and it's a difficult calibration to pull off.
I also think that our European neighbours will be watching this very closely. I mean, Sunday night is the
Second round
the playoffs.
of France.
Yeah, what do we call it? Yeah, the French
playoffs.
elections. You know,
Let's not get the Euros.
No.
Championships
Well, okay.
mixed
So
up
we've got a Saturday night game tomorrow. England playing there. But we've also got the final round of the French elections. And just as you might be able to argue, I think I was asking you guys earlier this morning, or maybe yesterday, whether what happened in France would have affected the reform vote. Is Macron, who was one of the first to congratulate Starmer overnight, saying we can work together on bilaterals. He didn't mention trade, but he talked about security, AI, the environment, big issues. Do not mention Brexit. But he clearly is watching to see whether we will be this bastion of centralism, right? Of centre left politics.
Well,
because he's about to lose his. The centre cannot hold.
Well, I kept wondering as well and we saw those pictures of Starmer and the King meeting, and these moments are incredible moments, sort of seeing it sort of unfold, right? Because it so rarely happens. We so rarely have transfers of power between parties. In this country, it only happens usually once every 14 or 15 years or so on the basis of the past few decades, anyway. And I wonder what Charles makes of it in the sense. I wonder whether he's just a bit relieved, like in the sense that politics in this country has been so riven constitutionally for the past decade and a half, right? It has been deeply unstable. The Conservative Party's internal instability has destabilised politics. Now, I think that politics will probably remain unstable for lots of different reasons. But it is true to say we have not had a government with an impregnable majority like this for a long time. There is no reason on paper that Starmer cannot and should not be Prime Minister until 2028 or 2029. And that does give the government a ballast that the previous governments we've had have not had, and that is a relief, I think, to a lot of people in the British state, not least the King, but also for a lot of the public as well. And I think Starmer is going to absolutely, as we were saying before, is going to make that a major theme of his premiership. Right, so we will be back on Sunday for the last of our Sunday shows, by which time the cabinet will be appointed, the whole government will be appointed. We'll have had that first cabinet meeting, and Keir Starmer will be getting ready to fly off to Washington for his first foreign trip to strut the world stage.
Yeah, and he will be on the world stage with President Biden, who has been trying to shore up support after his catastrophic debate performance. He gave an interview to a radio station last night in which he said that he was proud to have been, quote, the first black woman to serve with a black president.
Very
reassuring.
Well.
Very reassuring. We'll see you Sunday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Sleep well.
The Newsagents. This is a Global Player original podcast.